Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been in the games industry for 10 years, and in this time I have seen a lot. Things that I love about working with games and things that I hate as well. 10 years is a lot of time, and I have seen a lot of things in companies big and small. I have worked with AAA companies, I have worked with small companies, I have had my own in the studio. So I've been there in the industry for a while, right? And I want to condense 10 things that I hate about the games industry and 10 things that I love about it. So it's not about the games themselves, it's about the market, it's about the industry, it's about the people that work with games. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and let's go. I want to start with the things that I hate. And the first thing that I hate about the industry is how many companies don't focus on the games themselves and on the players, but rather they focus on the bureaucratic parts of the job. The budget and the spreadsheets and the schedules and all of that. And all of that is incredibly important, don't get me wrong. But when you turn that into the focus of the day-to-day job, it becomes just like any other job. It's like you're working at a law firm or something, not necessarily working with games. The games are there, but your experience as a developer, as a producer in my case, can be very different and boring many times. And point number two derives from that, and it's one of the worst things for me in the industry, and it's bad leadership. Unfortunately, I have seen my fair share of bad leaders in this industry. It's not easy to run a studio, big or small, but I have seen, a lot of simply bad leaders. If somebody is trying to be a good leader and they fail, then I totally get it. I've been there myself, so it's very hard. But if somebody's not even trying to be a good leader, then that really pisses me off. And it's one of the worst parts because that can turn a game development job for everyone like a mess, a nightmare many times, leading people to crunch or to lose motivation or to burn out or a lot of things. And then when you have bad leaders, you usually will have a bad culture. And a bad culture is my point number three with the company toxicity. When you have bad culture in any company, not only games, you get a lot of toxicity, harassment, the wrong kind of pressure, because pressure is always expected in many important projects. That is okay. But there's that bad pressure that leads to burnout, that sends the message that you simply don't care about your people, about your teams, the developers making the game. And that unfortunately is not always visible to you as a player. When you're playing a game, you can't see that because many times the games end up being great. The teams behind the games can be absolutely awesome and talented and very competent. But when you have a bad culture, a toxic culture, that leaves a mark on the entire team, right? And many times it's hard to spot that when you're simply playing the game or hearing about the game, watching cutscenes or whatever. But it's there. And even you as a player, you need to be kind of aware of that, right? That's happening with people behind the scenes making the games. Of course, I'm not saying it's all companies, but unfortunately, it's more common than you would think. All right, point number four, copycats. Well, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? The industry in the last decade, whatever, it's being flooded with copycats, with games that are simply crappy games. They're just trying to replicate other games one-to-one, many times not adding anything interesting, not adding a twist. And there's a term for that. It's called reskin. So you're simply creating kind of the same game. You take a successful game and you're going to recreate it and with a different skin. But if you're a small team, an indie team working on your first or second game, that is totally fine, right? That's how you develop the craft. That's how you learn how to make better games. Totally fine. But when you are a established company with 10 years background, you're not doing that to learn. You're simply doing that because it's easy, quote unquote. That's the assumption that you're going to do that simply copying other games because it's easier, and you might end up with a hit. You might end up with a copycat that is indeed successful. There are tons of that in the market. You have played many of them, right? But it's not one of the best parts in this industry. All right, moving on. I would say bad monetization practices. And yeah, as a player, we can all relate to that, right? Free to play is the biggest thing now in the world of games, and that is fine. I love free to play in many aspects, breaking the barrier of entrance for a lot of people. You can explore games freely, but then there comes a lot of bad production, not bad production, bad monetization practices that we see over and over in games in big companies. I'm looking at you. And it's not monetizing your enjoyment. It's not monetizing your excitement about the game and about the characters and about the storyline, because that's completely fine, right? The developers need to make money. They need to be sustainable as a business so they can continue doing that throughout the years, making more and exciting games. That's totally fine. But it's crazy to see how most of the market, many times, I would say a good chunk of the market, uses this data-driven approach together with psychology just to understand how we spend money and how can they maximize the money that we spend. And that's it. They will put whatever it takes in a game to make the most money, and that's it. Game design is in second place, player enjoyment and the narrative and the characters and having something to say with the game is secondary, and making the most amount of money is the first priority. So that happens a lot, and you know that, right? But then comes another point, like player toxicity. Toxicity doesn't come only from the companies themselves and the stakeholders and investors and CEOs and whatever. It also comes from players, right? Players can be very harsh with developers, with each other, with minorities, everyone trying to get into the games industry or into the games hobby itself. Players also know how to be very crappy with people. One classic example is how back in the day, not that long ago, games were not associated with women a lot, right? It would not be so common for women to be playing games and playing online games, especially. And then they would suffer a lot when trying to get into the hobby because they would suffer a lot of backlash and toxicity. And that simply sucks. It makes no sense. Games can be something for everyone, and it should be an inclusive environment. That's the whole point, especially in online games, connecting people all around the world. So when I see that, it really, really sucks. All right, that next one, as a producer myself, it pisses me off. The industry has no standards for production practices. So what I want to say is that because the games industry is so new in a certain way, like barely 50 years into existence, that the companies many times don't have standards about how to actually make a game. They just do it on the fly. They just are concerned with the next deadline, the next milestone. They don't think about it that often. You hear about in panels or in talks, and you think that they know what they're doing. But by working with a lot of companies, the reality is they don't. Most companies don't exactly know what they're doing. And I get it. Games are hard. Games are hard to make. They are kind of unpredictable, and you cannot simply schedule like step 1, 2, 3, right? But, many companies don't even try to have good standards or to raise their standards in terms of how they build the game. What should we do first? What should we do next? How should we structure production? That is very, very rare in my experience. All right, this one is an easy thing to hate, and it's mass layoffs or simply layoffs in general, right? Especially 2023 and now 2024, we have been seeing a lot, and I mean a lot of mass layoffs from larger companies, medium companies, many times even small companies, right? Because of COVID or not exactly, hundreds of developers, thousands of developers have been laid off in sequence, one after the other, back to back, in very short amount of time. And that is at least partially avoidable by the companies if they can think through their strategies more correctly, more sanely, and if they don't solely focus on crazy growth year after year to please stakeholders, to please investors, hiring hundreds, thousands of people that they cannot sustain over time, over the years, right? So that is many times an avoidable thing that companies can do. And we're talking about the lives of hundreds, thousands of developers. And the games industry is hard in the sense that in your city, there might not be a lot of game companies for you to work with. So you have to relocate. And I see that all the time. People have to relocate from city to city, country to country, in order to be continuing working with games if they want the next job, right? And that changes the life of the person, of the developer, so much, so drastically. And companies should be more responsible when dealing with that, and many times they are not, because they are simply focused on pleasing investors, on hitting the numbers for the next milestone, and that sucks. All right, next one is mergers and acquisitions. And if you follow games industry trends and news, you know about that. You have seen that a lot as well. That is when a bigger company like Microsoft or EA or Tencent or whatever, they purchase another smaller studio. And that has been happening a lot. And overall, it's not intrinsically a bad thing, but if it happens a lot, it is kind of a bad thing for the industry because you have less independent studios. For example, Microsoft is buying everyone, right? So all of those studios that are now part of Microsoft will be trying to generate revenue for Microsoft's strategy. They won't have, quote unquote, their own strategies in terms of their studios and their games that are trying to make. They're simply complying to Microsoft's strategy or whatever company it is. And we have seen even successful studios releasing successful games, commercially successful games, being shut down after because the parent company strategy has changed and they now have a different plan. And there it goes again, hundreds or thousands of developers laid off and having to find another job. And that is simply a sign of a lack of sustainability of the business overall, right? In many ways. In many ways, unfortunately, the games business is not that sustainable, at least not yet. The practices have been changing. Maybe we find some kind of balance in the next decades, but a lot of people will tell you that the games business is not that sustainable as it is. And the last thing that I hate about games, the games industry, and I promise I'll get to the things that I love as well. There's a ton of things that I love. But the last thing that I hate is that the lack of creativity and innovation. Games can be so much. They can say so much. They can explore different emotions and experiences and connect you with characters or other real people around the world. They can explore different art styles or different technologies or anything, right? Games are so rich as an entertainment media, as a craft, as an art form. But many games today don't have a lot to say. They are copycats, or they are easy games, or they are whatever. They're just trying to make some money and they don't have something unique to say. You are not impacted when you play the game, when you watch the cutscenes or everything that the game has to offer, because there's a lot of innovation and creativity left on the table, right? That could have been more explored, and they are not. In most of the games that you see on Steam or consoles, or especially mobile, probably. But yeah, across the board, games have a lot to say, and most games today, in my opinion, they lack creativity and innovation. All right, still with me? So let's get to the things that I actually love about the industry, because they are numerous. So the most obvious one is that I do love games. I have a passion about games, and working with games for a living, it's a dream come true. And having the opportunity to do that for 10 years, for an entire decade, and I have no plans to leave the industry until the rest of my career. So that's really, really a blessing. I feel very, very blessed to have this opportunity and to be, exploring the industry and growing as a professional, as a designer, as a producer. That's really a big thing to me. That's a big deal. Number two is the people. The games industry has amazing people. the teams, the developers, they are so talented. Most of them are so friendly, so easygoing. You can make a lot of friends very easily in the industry, even if you are shy or introvert, because a lot of people in the industry are shy and introvert people. So I have had a great time meeting people in companies, at conferences, all across the board. And I can tell you there's a lot of incredible people in the games industry. Number three, the players. I love connecting to the players. It is so awesome to make something, to make a game and have people play your game and criticize your game, and even give negative feedback is interesting for us to grow. But especially, of course, when people enjoy your game and they have a good time and your game impacts them in some way, that is a mind blowing experience to me and definitely one of the best parts of the craft and of the industry. In every road that I take, I try to connect with players as much as I can and understand their experience with the game, right? And how to make it better. That is such a motivating part of the job to me, right? Because I said before, like player toxicity, but most players are great. They are just enjoying the game. They are just, giving you good vibes and letting you know how much they enjoy the game or how much you can make it better for them. And that is awesome. Number four, I love the technical aspect of game development, working with engines and 3D software and artificial intelligence. There's a lot of so cool stuff going on in games. A lot of the advancements in technology that we have today, like AI or graphics card or virtual reality, it's all many times all of these technologies, all of this new tech, they start in games. They find their place first in games and then they reach other markets and other kinds of people. But it's awesome to see because it's really an avant-garde kind of experience to work with games like that, right? And the game engines like Unreal, they are so powerful and so realistic and they are so interesting. Even as a producer, my role is not so technical in the day to day, but I love learning more about this technical part of the job. Number five is diversity. Even though we still have a lot of battles to fight, but the games industry is very diverse. You will find a lot of incredible people from different backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities and all of that. And it's so enriching, getting in contact with so many different people, especially when working remotely from across the world. And I get to easily know people from other cultures and countries. And, it's simply a good time getting to understand more of the struggles and talents and perspective of different people around the world is really something else. All right, number six, game design. I love game design. I am a game designer, even though I don't professionally act day to day as a game designer for a while. I have done that in the past, but I still consider myself to be a game designer and I simply love the craft. Game design is the science and the craft of creating systems that the player will interact, creating mechanics, understanding how players will interact and engage with the game and crafting the experience or simply creating the environment where players will create the experience for themselves. Something like Minecraft or a very sandbox experience, an open world type of experience where you simply try to create the best systems where the player can live and enjoy all of the mechanics and engagements and combat or whatever. It's such an incredible and exciting part of the craft and of the industry. And yeah, I do love game design. I'm always studying new stuff about game design. And even if you don't intend to be a professional in games, I would still urge you to study a little bit of game design because that is so cool. You will perceive such different things when playing games. Number seven to me is hardware. What do I mean by that? Like, it's so incredible that you find a lot of different, unique, and innovative hardware related to games, like the Nintendo Wii or Switch or Xbox Kinect, if you remember that, or VR, and so many other things. I love the hardware part because it really gets us close to science fiction, things that we watch on movies, that we imagine in the future. Many times the gaming hardware makes you feel closer to that future. And to me, it's incredibly exciting to be working with new technology and other things. Next for me is game conventions. I love going to game conventions like Gamescom or GDC or many others that you have out there. There are a lot of conventions spread across the globe. And it's so exciting to get to meet new people, talk to developers, talk to players, understand what they're doing, watch panels and different people doing amazing things. It's so enriching. Every time I go to these conventions, I come back with something new and exciting to do, or a new idea, or a new perspective, or something like that. And having the opportunity to travel around the world to attend to these conventions is simply amazing. All right, number 9, I have to talk about the creativity and commitment from people, from the developers. You know, I have worked on a lot of different studios, big and small, and I can tell you that in most of these studios, and a lot more that I have heard from my colleagues and all, most people are simply trying to give their best. They are trying to give their best. They're trying to make the best game possible. They're trying to interact with other people in a genuine and honest way. And that's great to see. There are different kinds of people. I'm not saying everyone is super amazing, but most people are, at least in my experience. Most people are simply good and talented, and they're trying to do the best job. So that's really a plus working in this industry. And number 10, last one, this might be repeating myself a little bit, but I love the fact that games are many times are at the forefront of new discoveries and breakthrough in technology. Like I said, AI, one of the big things with AI for a while, you have ChatGPT now for a year or two or something, at least publicly, but AI has been a big deal in games for many, many years, right? The way you interact with AI in games. And it's so amazing to see that a lot of these incredible discoveries, they start or they get more muscle when applied to games. And they develop there, even like training self-driving cars. The way you train self-driving cars is by creating a simulation. And that simulation is pretty much a virtual world. It's pretty much a game. And the virtual car, the AI will train there in this simulation different traffic situations and different kinds of responses and decisions that it has to make before converting into the real world, right? So that is such an incredible part. Like games are an art form, like books or films or other things, but this interactivity and technological part of the craft is something quite unique. And to me, it is amazing to see all of the implications and all of the applications that you can work with games. So there's that. All right, would you add something that you love or hate about games or about the industry or about people? Leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead, subscribe now, and I'll catch you guys next time.